there, I am here to make a short video about how to approach the ornamentation in the Sonata in D by Franz Joseph Haydn. It's Hoboken number 16 and it's the fourth sonata. It's also number 9, the number 9 sonata in D major. If you're not familiar with it, it's the one that looks like this. Got all kinds of writing on there. Don't worry too much about that. But it explains some of the ornamentation. Okay, so I'm gonna break it down. We've got a melody that sounds like this. So that's the first phrase. And there are a couple of things going on. The first thing there is that you have a little turn, okay, and then there's a sharp underneath it, so it looks like this. Okay, it actually looks like a mordant sign, which is the little squiggle with the slash through the center, but usually we would play this one as a turn, and a turn is kind of, so it's on A, right? It's on A, and a turn kind of turns around the note. So I don't actually start the turn on A. I start the turn on, so here's A. And I'm going to start the turn on the note higher than A, which is B. Then I'm going to go down to A. And then I'm going to go to the G sharp, because on my score, there's the squiggle sign, the turn sign, and then right below that, that's a sharp. So that's indicating that one of the notes in the ornament is sharp. It wouldn't really make sense to have B sharp. That's not quite right. Not for Haydn. And so the typical ornamentation would be that usually they would almost treat it like a little bit of a, well, it's a chromatic aspect. There's a chromatic aspect to that ornament. So the first part is the turn. So I'm going to go B, A, G sharp, A. And I'm going to land on A, and I'm going to play it all with the beat. That means the first note of my ornament is going to be on the beat. So here's, my foot is the metronome. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so let's talk about that second ornament. So the second ornament is a little bit funnier still. The second ornament is this one here, and it's got this little tiny grace note first, and we're going to play that grace note as an appoggiatura, which is going to lead into the C sharp. Okay, so here's the D, and then it goes to a C sharp where the trill is. So we're going to play the D like an appoggiatura, which basically means that we're going to take this half note and split it in half. So the appoggiatura, because it's an ornamentation of the main note, and the main note in the end of the phrase there is the C sharp. The appoggiatura is going to take it in half. It's going to split that note in half. And the first note is going to be where I'm going to play the D, and the second note on beat 4 is where I'm going to play the C sharp. So it looks like a grace note. I know, except that it doesn't have a slash through it. And basically what we want to do is take the style, and when we're looking at how to figure out ornamentation in pieces of music, we're really looking at everything that is within the style of the music of that period and also that region. And so this is, you know, your ornamentation in Mozart and Haydn is going to look pretty similar. And in Beethoven as well, although, you know, there's always a little bit of flexibility with the ornamentation too. So for example, and I think it's probably worth mentioning this at this point, is that there is a repeat in this Haydn piece, right? So it would also be fairly typical of when you're playing through the first time to play it in a less ornamented way than the way that you would play it through the second time. So you might change the ornaments a little bit the second time, or you might make it more elaborate, right? So there are different treatments, and it really does give a little bit more choice or that element of interpretation to the person who's playing it. So different people might treat these ornaments differently is another way of putting it. Okay, so this is sort of like I want to try to play a fairly historically informed version of the piece. So getting back to that appoggiatura, so in bar 2 where you have the D going to the C sharp, I'm going to play that as, go back to the G before that. Okay, so that's beat 3 and then the 4 and that goes with the 2 left-hand notes. Right, that's where the trill is. And I'm going to repeat the D. Some people may or may not repeat the D. Some people might make that ornament a little bit more elaborate, as if it's maybe the second time around. So that might change a little bit. And so then we have the next section of the piece. So there's a lot going on in there. The first part is that generally speaking, and perhaps this little video won't really convey it as much as I would like it to, but for the first part of that, we have a repeated segment. So there's this bit. It's a little bit of a call and response there, right? So I'm going to play it again, but then you'll notice in bar 4, which is the next part, it's the exact same pitch material. And usually with the exact same pitch material, we're going to want to make it a little bit like an echo. So da 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 dum, ba da 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 dum. Excuse my singing voice. And then the second time I play it, I'm going to play a little bit quieter. So let's try that. And then we get into the next part. So the next part, because I have this exact same symbol that I had in the beginning, which was the thing that looks like a mordant, I know, but we're going to play it like a turn, okay? In some scores, it might look like a turn. This is an text edition. It's Henley, right? So the other funny thing is not only is there more interpretive material that we're dealing with when we're dealing with older music that doesn't tell us everything that we're supposed to play in a really prescriptive way, but there are different editions of pieces. So this is an text edition, and that means that it's pretty much faithful to Haydn's version of the piece. So his squiggle with the slash that looks like a mordant might mean that it looks like a mordant, right? Or it might mean that it's something else, and that's almost like a shorthand. And there are a couple of interesting things in this piece that speak to that. Okay, so let's talk about bar 5. So bar 5, you have that same symbol. So because the symbol is the same, we're going to treat it the same way. So at the beginning, we had this turn around A, right? And in bar 5, we have right? Okay, so there are a couple things. The first thing is that the F sharp has nothing, but the G has a little turn, and I'm going to include the F sharp in that turn. So it's going to go, if I slow it down, A, G, F sharp, G. Okay? And then the next one is a turn on A. So it's the squiggle on A. And I'm going to play those on the beat with the left hand. Okay? And then the next part is another sort of like one of those interesting appoggiaturas, right? So I'll bring the score up. So here it is, all right? There it is, close up. And you've got A, G, F sharp, E. A, G, F sharp, E. A, G, F sharp, E. And that's the G, is written as an eighth note. And the note before it, A, is written as an appoggiatura. So the G is actually the main note, and they're saying, well, the A is ornamenting it, except, so you'll see that for somebody I wrote 4 16th notes. So really how we're going to play that is we're just going to play it as 4 plain old 16th notes, because we're going to take that first note, that eighth note, and split it in half and give half of it to the A, sort of like we did over here in bar 2. We took that half note in half and we gave half of it to the D before it. Okay, so that part's going to sound where you have the A, G, F sharp, E, plain 16th notes, and against the left hand. Okay, so that's that part. Let me go from bar 5. Okay, so then we have that same figure at the end of bar 6 that we saw at the end of bar 5. So we're going to play that the same way. But before that, where you have TR, which stands for trill, and then the two 30-second notes, pardon me, that follow it. So TR on the G, trill, and then the 30-second notes that follow it. So the trill in Haydn's time was very similar to the treatment of the trill in the Baroque era, in that we start the trill most of the time on the upper note. So it's written as a trill on G, and in some periods you might want to write that as, or you might be playing it as a GA trill, but not for Haydn. So there, at the beginning of bar 6, we're going to play an F sharp, and then I'm going to go immediately to the A and do my little trill, and then I'm going to finish it off with the 32nd note. So the trill essentially runs into the 32nd notes and back up to the A. So here it is again. That's sort of a slow version of that. So but beat 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So if I go a little bit more up to speed there, let's try that out. And then there's also another one of those trills at the end of the phrase. So at the very end of bar 7, before the rest, you'll see that there's this figure. And you're going to repeat the D, and again start the trill in the upper note, and the trill is written as a trill on C sharp. So that trill figure, if I don't count the D that happens right before it, that's written there as a 16th note, it's going to go like that. Okay. So that's those are the first 2 lines of this piece. And much of what we pick up in the first 2 lines of this piece, we're going to apply to the rest of the piece. There's some different material in there, but wherever you have, for example, a portion of the piece where it repeats, so just like we had this part where we played the repeat softer, so we're going to apply that same principle to other parts of the piece that are similar. So if I take a look at what's going on in bar 14, which is this bit, I'm going to play that repetition that happens in bar 16 a little bit softer. And what that does is it draws the ear a little bit closer, right? Oh, Now what's going on? Oh, it's the same thing, but so it has that way of grabbing the attention of the listener and making the piece more interesting. So we're almost done talking about this piece because I think a lot of the other material is pretty self-explanatory, except that there's just one thing that I wanted to point out when we return back to some of the thematic material that we saw at the beginning. So that is in bar 13. I think it's just worthwhile talking about this, and perhaps there are multiple interpretations that you could make of this. So bar 13 is here, all right? There it is. It's a little more square. You've got, so if we look at how the beats are broken down, 1, 2, and 3, especially look over here. So here we have these 4 16th notes, okay? And if you take a look at this bit where you have the 2 teeny tiny little 16th note grace note thingies, okay? Then let's go back to where that material returns, where that thematic material returns, which is here. It's written quite differently, all right? So that is in bar 48, 49, 50, 51. And here you have, instead of having 2 teeny tiny 8 or 16th notes, they're written as 16th triplets, okay? And instead of having the 16th notes at the end of the bar, they're written as, well, they're written as an appoggiatura with a 16th note and 2 32nds, but you would play those again just like plain old 32nd notes. But you'll notice that the idea of that, it sounds different because we're dealing with 16th notes and 32nd notes. Okay, so just to finish off with that, if we take a look at bar 13, it's going to sound like this. Okay, whereas if we go back to bar 51, it's going to sound, and it's in a different key. Because they're 32nd notes at the end. So I'm playing the triplet, I'm playing the first part where you have the teeny little 8th note, or I keep on saying 8th notes, it's 16th notes. The teeny little 16th notes in bar 13 are the same as I'm playing the triplet figure in bar 51. But I'm changing the end to give it a little bit more oomph at the end of bar 51. In bar 13, I'm playing them as 16th notes as they are written, and in bar 51, I'm playing them as 32nd notes. So I hope that helps, and if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the thread. I'm sure you can look up many wonderful performances of this piece, and some of them might be a little bit different. They might have a different interpretation. I'm just giving you mine, and I try to stay, there was one time I was probably a little bit more historically informed, but I always keep this Howard Ferguson keyboard interpretation near my piano so that I can be reminded of things like historical fingerings, hooray, and ornamentations as well. Okay, talk to you later, bye.